But obviously, it seems to me, at least from the outside, your parents must have done something right that they got two brothers who so care about ideas but are true experts in their field of math and biology, and that care about doing what I see as what's right, and being brave enough to constantly do that. What did they do that was right, or where did this passion for education and all of that come from? Older brother, you first.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I think that the family history has a few ingredients, and not all of them are about the nuclear family. I think that there were four families that came out to California. We grew up not too far from here, and they came out to make mayonnaise. It was the Gelfons who figured out how to make mayonnaise not separate properly, the Kernicks, the Marglins, and the Rubins. And the Rubins were the weakest branch of
You're not
this
making
family.
this up,
No.
The Rubins,
We are Rubin chicks.
Yeah.
So we were raised by Harry and Sophie Rubin as well as our parents. And Harry Rubin was a chemist who couldn't finish college. I think there's a family history of learning issues. And there was a lot of question about how to ground one's idealism in rationality, so that you are fundamentally thinking with your head, feeling with your heart, and that the two of them remain connected. And I think that there was a lot of emphasis on not taking shortcuts to a better tomorrow and to taking massive risks.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the head-heart thing, because I think you're particularly in that space these days.
Well, it's tough because I think that, as we've been talking about this group of people who sort of growing up outside of standard channels of communication, and made a joke about the intellectual dark web, and then it got repeated, we sort of ran with it. But the only part of it that was dark was that the media and the institutions weren't, sort of making sure to avoid any reference to this group of people as much as possible. And I think that this intellectualism outside of the mainstream was definitely a part of our family growing up. And I think that the learning issues, in some sense, disconnected us from standard institutional structures. And one of the things I think we'll get to hopefully today is that while people are tuning into this conversation that Bret and I have been having for a long time, there were a lot of previous rounds where there just wasn't anyone to talk to. And there were a lot of different issues that got brought up. And it would be great to use this current passion, where you may see it over free speech, perhaps I see it a little bit less so over that. But it would be great to talk about some of the previous battles that we've fought that involve things like drug testing or wealth transfer by using the CPI as a closet way of raising taxes and slashing benefits. So we've been at this a long time, and the great new thing, I think, is that there's so many new voices, and there's this channel to go around and to disintermediate this very strong thing that I call the gated institutional narrative, which we've never been able to crack through so easily, and now we have channels where we can actually get to the world.
Yeah, well, as I said to you guys right before we started, I mean, I've scribbled down a few things here, but I fully want you guys to take as much control here as you see fit. I mean, he teed you up on a couple things there, but just first, just on the family stuff growing up, I mean, in the house, was just education and education and education just constantly drilled into you guys?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, the concept of education was quite prominent, but as Eric points out, neither he nor I had a comfortable experience in school. They were different uncomfortable experiences, but both of them were troubling in many ways.
So for you, for example, what does that mean?
I think Eric figured out some mechanisms for getting through school that were more effective than what I did. And in my case, I actually remember being in the second grade, and my handwriting and spelling in particular were so bad that I remember school giving up on me and declaring me off in some way. And I this is the adult me looking back, but I felt a choice. I can either submit to what its judgment of me is and I can try to confront it, or I can stop playing ball. And that's what I did, which caused my academic life to come apart, and really it didn't go back together arguably ever, although I did find a home in graduate school. But the process of walking away from the formal education and then having, our grandmother died relatively early, but Harry, our grandfather, was a really interesting intellectual person who had the unique characteristic of taking children very seriously. And that doesn't mean he wasn't fun. He wasn't in it. He was extremely fun. But it meant really, if I think back on it, you could ask him any question. And if it was a good question, he would do his best to answer it, and he would let you know at the point that you'd topped out what he could address. And that, it was like having a personal intellectual tutor. And that was one facet that was particularly important, maybe especially for me, but it sort of picked up where school left off, and because he was an unusual mind in his own right, I think some of the stuff that Eric and I picked up from him ended up being sort of jumping off points to places that are hard to get to through the standard model.
Yeah.